Hello, Nicola, and welcome to my very small channel. I'm very humbled that you've given your time to me today to be part of this conversation. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Ellie. Thank you for inviting me. You've got a wonderful
I
channel.
love it. It's so much fun, isn't it? I love all the different conversations and all the people that I'm meeting, including you. So we met at Detectable finally after quite a long time. I feel like we've been chatting for a while over various social media channels, but we met at Detectable. I think the last time I saw you had a drink in your hand.
Yeah, well, we were going to go detecting the next day, and then unfortunately, because my this is my excuse, my glamping tent was so comfortable, I overslept and I let you down.
Okay, that's your excuse. Okay, I want to say a big welcome to you. And I'm sure you don't need any introduction at all, but I will just say for anyone that doesn't know that Nicola White's other name online is Tideline Art, and that you are a London mudlark, a detectorist, and an artist as well. And we can see, I think, are you sat in your kind of collection room?
I am, yes. So I've got a lot of things behind me there on my shelves, and yes, I'm surrounded by lots of objects that have washed up on the River Thames and other rivers.
I love seeing your collection behind you there. It rather reminds me of what I can see behind me. I think we must be very similar magpies
Yeah.
picking up lots of different things. And today's conversation is really the aim of it is to help detectorists and people who are interested in history to understand some of the things that we're finding on the surface of the soil whilst we're detecting, looking for metallic objects. We sometimes find things that aren't metal at all and that I think can add some extra layers of understanding about our permissions. So thank you for being part of this, because we find fragments, we find things like that, which have been completely damaged by the plough, and you find whole or almost whole objects, which have been preserved by the mud. I mean, it's the perfect medium, really, isn't it, for preserving fragile and very detailed objects.
It is. I think the mud, it cushions it nicely for centuries and protects it, unlike a ploughed field where things get smashed up. And with the Thames mud also being anaerobic with no oxygen in it, it's like a time capsule, so it stays like it was when it went in.
It's really addictive watching you reveal what's there, because it's covered in a kind of bit of a slimy layer as well. So you often can't really tell from the colour what it might be, but you can see, your eyes are obviously trained in to see different shapes than you would expect in the mud. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we have a saying in the mudlarking world about getting your eye in, and you tend to get accustomed to what you might be looking for, and you're looking for unnatural shapes, rounded edges, things like that, or a little bit of a pipe stem sticking out of the mud.
Yeah,
You
that's the same. I'm a beachcomber, and it's exactly the same when you're looking at sand. It's quite kind of visually hectic, isn't it? But if you are looking, really what you're trying to do is ask your brain to sort out what looks different here, what's geometric or perfectly circular or got a different color to it. So that's what you've got to clear away the noise and look for those things that are different, I guess. I'm hoping that what we can do today is a kind of show and tell, so that we can see what some of the objects we might most commonly find in the soil look like when they're whole, because you're the lucky person that gets to see those things. We'll focus on, I think, three of the sort of most common finds that we find: pipes,
Mhm.
ceramic, and glass. And maybe we could start with pipes, because that's the thing I think we associate with mudlarks.
There's a huge amount of clay pipes that have been thrown into the River Thames, largely because so many people smoked. I mean, men, women, and children, right from when tobacco was introduced back in 1580. There was a huge amount of people that smoked. So a lot of these clay pipes have made their way into the River Thames, along with a lot of other things that have been thrown into the river. So I particularly enjoy finding clay pipes, and we're more likely, obviously, to find them in one piece on the Thames as opposed to in the field where they're going to be broken up. Um, and so I've got a few of my pipes
Look
here. I mean, these
at that.
are.
Oh, that's wonderful. I've never held a whole one. I've only ever, never, no, I've only ever found little bits like this, which I'm sure is what most detectorists will find this kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um, It's beautiful, isn't it? It must be made of a very fine clay to be able to create such a long, with such a long, tiny little hole running through it.
Yes, that's right. Well, they're made in a mold, and we can tell a lot about them by the shape of the bowl, which indicates often that, how old they are. The larger bowls are usually a little bit more recent. I've often found little bits of clay pipe stem on the fields, and like I said, it's because so many people used to smoke. Let me have a look here. Men, women, and children alike. In fact, it was highly encouraged, back in the day. There were even reports about tobacco and the great virtues of it. It was brilliant for the relief of toothache, falling fingernails, protecting against the plague,
Oh,
worms, halitosis, and lockjaw. And actually, in Eton College, boys were made to smoke pipes for breakfast to protect them from the
wow.
plague.
And it's actually really lovely to see some of those contemporary images there. And because you do associate pipes mainly with men, don't you? But actually, there we are, an image of a woman smoking. It doesn't quite become her, actually, does it? But I guess it was the it was the way back then.
No, that's right. And so, like I said, we can actually date pipes from their shape. So the smallest ones, like this, for example, that is the tiniest pipe that I found, and that probably dates right back to 1580. And then the bowls change, they really evolve into different shapes. And so sometimes, if you're lucky enough to find a bowl on the field, it helps to have a good pipe chart. And I'll give you some resources where you can find those later. But also, another thing to bear in mind is that when you find the clay pipe stem, it's usually the thicker it is, the older it is, and also
Ah,
the size of the hole. So a nice chunky sort of piece of pipe stem
oh,
generally big.
great. Okay. It's interesting what you were saying about pipe smoking starting in the late 1500s when tobacco came to
Yeah,
Britain. So obviously what that means is we can quite tightly, if you find a pipe, you've found something that was dropped somewhere between late 1500s and late 1800s, really, haven't you? You can
that's right.
define that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because after that, in the First World War kind of era, was when cigarettes and wooden pipes started to
Yeah,
become.
that's right. Sort of by about sort of 1920, 1930, more and more people were smoking cigarettes, and it was a much less common to smoke a pipe.
Yeah,
There were
okay.
some around. So that was my smallest one. And like I said, again, there's plenty of charts that can help you date the pipes. But they were mostly plain back in the 1700s and before that, apart from maybe a little initial. It's always worth checking the bottom of the heel to see if there's an initial on there.
Is the heel that little bit that you can see underneath the bowl where it would rest on the table?
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes
Okay.
you get initials either side, or sometimes you get right underneath the heel, you'll get a stamp as well. So it's worth having a good look just to see if you might have a clue there as to who could have made your pipe. Because it
Okay, because I found a stem last time I was on Scilly actually, which had, it was just a fragment of a stem like this, but it
yeah.
had what looked like a letter on the side of it. But I wonder if it was just my eyes was, sometimes your eyes see things, don't they, that aren't there.
No, no, it will have been an initial. That usually there would be I think it's the name of the person on the right hand side, and then the surname on the other side. So
Ah, okay. Well, it was only one letter. It looked like an initial, and it looked like a J or an I in quite a kind of curly font, which I thought maybe that could be a letter.
So back in about 1850, 1860, clay pipe makers started to put their names on the side of the pipe stem, and then on the other side would be the place where they make the pipe. For example, Jephthah Stubbs on one side, that's a clay pipe maker that I come across quite a lot, and on the other side would be Plumstead. So if you find a piece of stem with a name on either side, you'll know for sure that it's mid
Mid
19th century.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so there are some sort of characteristics that help us to date it, as well as the shape of the bowl, the decoration. Some
Yeah.
of them are quite ornate, aren't they? The bowl.
Some of the clay pipes are very, very ornate. Yeah, I have found a number of extremely artistic clay pipes.
Great. Okay, so these are some websites where we can go to find out more, see some of these charts and scans, just to see.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, the Society for Clay Pipe Research is an excellent resource, and they also have a Facebook page which you can join, and then you can post a
Brilliant.
picture of your pipe, or a pipe stem, or even a pipe heel, or a fragment of a bowl. And there's some really very good experts on the Society for Clay Pipe Facebook
You know
page.
what? Facebook groups are just brilliant, aren't they? There are, I mean, sometimes you get some wrong, some wrong IDs, but normally it sort of works its way through the system and the right thing. At least it gives you a pointer. So that's super helpful. Thank you very much for sharing those resources. Wow, look at some of those more intricate ones. So they were made in two halves basically, and then sandwiched together.
Yeah, that's right. That's why sometimes at the front of the pipes you get a seam down the middle here, which sort of just covers up the mold line.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we were talking the other day about clay pipes because I wasn't sure whether they were found so much in rivers and fields because they were basically disposable items or got blocked very easily when, full of tar. But you said you thought actually the sort of ideas about that are changing as we learn more.
That's right. Well, to be honest with you, I thought that clay pipes were essentially just disposable, but I've recently had a chat with a few people actually at the Society for Pipe Research page, society rather, and they said that actually it's more the reason we find so many really is more that they were just so many people who smoked, and some people had their favorite pipes that they used to keep as long as they could, and sometimes they were put into like a kiln to clean them out, if they were blocked up.
Ah,
So they weren't maybe quite as disposable as I thought,
yeah.
and so on
Were
the
they
other hand,
were they expensive, do you think? Were they
they
expensive?
weren't. I don't think they were particularly expensive. No, because clay pipe making was so competitive. There were thousands of clay pipe makers, so they had to keep their prices competitive. And also, they were sometimes given away free, so I'm told, filled with tobacco a little bit later on in taverns as well, given away with a pint of
Oh,
beer.
really? Wow.
Yeah. So
Imagine being able to go back to that kind of a tavern and just going in. I bet it was just thick with smoke and just noisy, and I bet it smelled really strong. It would be quite fun, wouldn't it, just to go back?
it would. It really would. It would be ever so interesting to
I'm
go.
not sure we would be allowed in, quite honestly, because I guess I'm not sure. Were women allowed to go into a men's tavern then?
Well, I suppose they probably had more men's only taverns.
Yeah.
Certainly.
They might
But
not respect us as much as they should if we went in there. They might think we were ladies of the night.
yeah, that's true. That is true. I'm guessing, like on farms, for example, it must be quite similar to say that the dockyard areas that we search here on the Thames, where I find a lot of clay pipes that have just been thrown away, and they look like they've only been used once or twice. Um, but I think a lot of workers used to have
Yeah.
a smoke during their tea break or during their lunch. Whenever I find a pipe, I do wonder about the last person who held it and what they were thinking.
Thank you for sharing that about pipes. I think I can see now then, I've learned from you that I've got two different types of pipe here. I've got this one, which is probably quite old because it's got a big, thick old hole. Look, you can almost
Yeah,
see through it.
that's right.
And it's chunky and it's not as refined. And then I've got this bit, which is really white and clean and very, very fine hole running all the way through the middle, literally like 1 millimeter hole, where this one's like 3 millimeters. So I feel like I've got a much older bit of pipe here than I have here. So I've learned something already. Thank you so much. So, okay, let's move on then to ceramic, because I think that's the thing I get asked the most about, is because I find a lot of ceramic on the permission that I call my Roman fields. I find a lot what I can just spot a mile off now.
Yeah.
This beautiful profile, all the pot edges have this kind of turned rolled top, and a smaller version of it might look like something like that.
Yeah.
And then you find it in various colors, which is this kind of grey ware, and then you find sometimes this more almost like a biscuity feeling thing, and you can sometimes see a base I mean, I love finding ceramic. I pick up loads of it, and then I find some of this stuff which is much shinier. People say, well, how do you know though that that is Roman? What should I be looking for? And it's hard to describe because it's really a feel, isn't it?
It's a case of of practicing and also learning as you go along when you're finding a piece of pottery, and then consulting the experts. So let me
Goodness
just
me,
go up here.
Nicola, these look, wow. I think I would have to lie down in the mud if I found things that look like that, honestly. I don't know
Yes,
what to do with myself.
I know we are very fortunate. So I mean, but like the Thames, you know, I think in fields we can find. What I love is you can find something absolutely ancient, like this piece of Roman pottery, which is part of a pinch-necked flagon from Roman times, and then right not far from it, you're going to get a bit of modern plastic. Like, and actually, this is quite vintage itself because it's
That's vintage. I was going to say I recognise the logo from my childhood. That's
1970.
amazing. Yes, you've got the complete kind of, and what's weird is that it hasn't sort of layered up like you would expect the Roman stuff to be sort of right down underneath, but that's still coming up to the surface as much as you find your yogurt pot next to it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a bit like the pottery that you've just been showing us. That black kind of, you know, Roman pottery often manifests itself in that black color with some very faint designs on it sometimes,
Mm.
um, and then also the orangey colors, and sometimes really thick as well. I've got some Iron Age pottery.
Oh, have you? I was going to say, what's your oldest kind of pot? Because
Yeah,
I
I've
know.
got a lot.
Oh, wow.
That's
Okay.
Yeah, and
That
it's
is
so thick,
serious.
and it does have, you know, often it's very coarse as well. It's like a big biscuit with lots of inclusions in it.
Wow. Yeah. So inclusions being crushed stuff that might
Yeah,
have been local to the area where it was made, and it's intended to kind of keep the object from exploding in the heat of the fire or the kiln.
yeah,
That's a lovely piece. So that's basically as old can be. That's a stunning little piece of pot.
yes. And so, of course, obviously, if you're detecting and there's been a Roman villa not, you know, not far away that you might have worked out from old maps or the history of the area, then it's often likely that you're going to find Roman pottery that's come from a kitchen, you know, such as this kind of pottery, that would have once upon a time probably been in some Roman household. And here as well as part of a flagon, which I found a couple of years ago.
Goodness me. And when you find that, you just know because it's the kind of it's the profile of the shape, isn't it?
It
Combined
is,
with
yeah.
the texture, the surface texture, which feels quite, I mean, I've got a couple of bits here. So when you feel it, it's got a kind of slightly sandy quality to it, hasn't it? When you
It has. It does have a sandy quality to it. Yes,
yeah, it's
it's not
not glazed. It's
shiny.
yeah, it's kind of unglazed, isn't it? It feels
Yeah.
unglazed. Yeah. And of course we forget, but we have Tupperware and glass jars, etc., and metalware for our kitchens. But then everything was stored in ceramic, wasn't it? I mean, even they would bring oils and sauces all the way from Rome to Britain in jars, and that was their method of transporting things too. So
That's right. And one thing I learned recently is that these earthenware sort of vessels, they're porous, you know, so they're not glazed. And so when they kept liquid like water inside these flagons, it was also to help keep the water cool.
oh, I see.
Because
Okay.
the water used to sort of slightly seep, you know, through the
Yeah,
wall of
okay, so it's got a kind of like a refrigerating quality as well to put stuff in ceramic. Ah, ooh,
yeah.
that okay. Yeah, I've got a bit of
This,
that, but
yeah,
not a
this
whole
is
bit.
my what's it called? Roman mortarium.
Oh, that's a lot deeper than I was expecting. Right, let me get a sherd so we can compare. Okay, so I've got this lovely piece, which I think is lovely because it's got a kind of, I don't know if I can show it to you, but it's got like a line, a design in it almost. Pretty primitive. That is just gorgeous. It's quite deep, isn't it? Your one is missing its lip, isn't it?
I've got
You've
the lip.
got the lip. Okay. So this is for grinding and making sauces that you then pour.
Yes, that's right. And in here, it's like a very old-fashioned kind of a blender. You know, it's full of pieces of flint, little inclusions. So when you would put the things in here to
Yeah.
stir around, it would help to sort of grind them all down. And often, and then these could be placed directly on the ashes as well, you know, to heat up
Warm
the.
it. I wonder
But
why the mortaria are always made of this more white clay and the other vessels, storage vessels, are often of the darker stuff. Do you think there's a reason why?
do you know what? I don't know.
They are always white though, aren't they, these?
And they generally are actually.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because you want to see the sauce, because it's visually quite interesting to see the colour of the sauce, maybe. Don't
It
know.
could be. It could
Hmm.
be that. If I go back to the uh, the Mortaria here, so they often used to make their favourite sauces in there, like a garum, which was a strong tasting fishy custard made of
Ugh.
yeah, fermented in salt water.
That really is the most revolting
Yeah,
description.
I know.
E custard. Who thought of that? Sack the copywriter. Come up with a better name.
Yes, in fact, when I was looking more closely at what Roman pottery might have had in it, I came across a very old cookbook by Apicius, The Art of Cooking, and Marcus Gavius Apicius was a Roman gourmet, and he wrote quite a few cookbooks. And one of his favourite recipes was flamingo tongues. Um,
Not readily available in many of today's
no, that's
supermarkets.
right. And he goes into great detail to how you do it. But in this, you know, in this recipe, it uses the mortarium, crushed pepper, and all sorts of herbs. And so they were often used to make these very elaborate
And
sauces.
actually, it's still pretty reminiscent of Mediterranean cooking today, isn't it? Sort of working with oils, herbs, and spices to make marinades and it's dressings. It's still very much the way of cooking now. That's amazing. Actually, there's a guy on Instagram who I don't know if he's using that cookery book as a reference, but he cooks Roman dishes
Does he?
and then tastes them and sees whether they kind of meet up to to our palate today.
And this is another kind of pottery that you may have found some yourself in the fields, and it's got a slightly more shiny glaze on it. It's got a slip on it, so it's
Yeah.
samenware, and it's usually very distinctive. You know, it's a lovely orange color. It's often got patterns on. This is part of a cup here. Fine dining
Fine
table.
line. Best china. This is the best china. I have found a few bits, but sadly not anything decorated yet. I think those molded pieces are so beautiful, aren't they?
They are. I've had a few pieces recorded with the museum. This is one of my favourite pieces here. I think that's the goddess Victory on there. It would have come from a bowl very much like that. And then this is my most recent favourite piece. It's a hair on there. Can you
Yeah,
see that?
yeah, amazing. But, you know, the place where I detect, there was a very similar motif found on a stone tablet, and the hair was obviously a kind of food, a real source of food then. And I hadn't seen any hairs ever in my life until I start detecting this piece of land. Now I see hairs there really quite regularly. It obviously hasn't changed at all since those times.
One of my star finds, and you're not likely to find this in a field, but you will find little fragments of it. And this is an entire Samian plate here, which I found in the mud. I actually, first of all, found a flagon, and this would have been funeral
I
dishes.
think I've just watched this video and my heart was in my mouth when you pulled the plate out because I thought, God, what would you do if it broke in your hand?
I know, and the museum has this. They've had them for like 2.5 years now, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get them back. But yeah, it was incredible. It was as if it had been made yesterday, you know, and it's got the potter's stamp on it there, the name of the potter, and it's just quite incredible. It even still had some kind of food substance in the plate as well, which I kept as well to
Oh,
give to.
really? What sort of, how could you tell that was food and not mud? What did it look like?
It was sort of wow. It looked like grains, you know, and pieces of like almost grass, like just
Oh, it's
you.
a good job you didn't go too hard with the cleaning. So what did you do? Just gently soak it in water, or how did you?
I just put it all in a bag. I put it in a bag and put it in the freezer.
Yeah.
To Stuart when my finance liaison officer. Yeah,
What's that?
this is another one. This is it's got a missing piece here, but this is actually a Roman poppy head beaker, and so called because it looks a bit like a poppy head, and also it's got this lovely little dotted.
A design mark, and that must have been made with a stick or something, isn't
Yeah,
that?
that's right. So this was also an absolutely stunning
Oh,
find.
that even the base where it's been removed from the wheel is
Yeah.
just so pretty, isn't it? There's something about the Roman shapes, the sculptural quality of the Roman pot is just something else. They had serious skill. I know they brought a lot of their potters from Gaul, didn't they, when they invaded Britain and set up whole kind of potteries and kilns in places around Britain.
That's also Roman. So this one does have a nice sheen to it. That's
Does, yeah.
yeah,
That's nice.
which is curious. And again, it just looks. It was in a few pieces, but I managed to stick it together.
It's almost like black. Can you get, I think you can you get a black Samian ware or a black, there's a black type, isn't there, that's shiny? I can't think what it's called
No,
now.
I'm not absolutely certain. This one I've yet to show to the flow, but it's the same kind of color as that a lot of Roman pottery, but which doesn't have a sheen.
Yeah, it is, but it's, as you say, it's unusual because it's got that shine. It must have some sort of glaze, and it's actually in the broken bit, it's quite pale, isn't it?
Yeah.
Broken.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it is.
Sometimes you get those differences, and the outside and the inside are two different colors. I haven't got anything here, but that, I think that's caused by the temperature inconsistencies in the kiln.
To find out about pottery, I'm not sure if you know Richard Hemery.
I'm familiar with Richard's work. He's incredible. Yes, thank you for sharing this. Okay, he's written a book.
Yes, he's got a very well. He's got done a couple of books now. One of them is pottery that you find on the Thames, but and that's very useful because you don't just find it on the Thames. You can find it in fields as well. But he's also got this book, and it's absolutely huge. I've got a copy of it here, and it's just got every kind of
Oh, wow, look at that.
pottery that you could ever possibly say, you know, ever possibly want to know about. And he's gone into great detail about everything from Iron Age, you know, Roman. And he's also on Instagram, and you can message him. He's at Thames Pottery. Just here, the name of his Instagram is just above Richard here. But yes, he's brilliant, and I have to say that when I find pottery, he is the first person that I consult.
Okay, so let's say you haven't been lucky enough to find any Roman pottery, but maybe you're interested in medieval.
Right, medieval. Let me have a look. Well, I've got. I'm going to share my screen with you again because it's got pictures of what I've got. Obviously, you sometimes find. I don't know if you find any of these on the
Well,
fields.
I haven't yet, and I'm fascinated by this. I didn't even know what they were called until you mentioned it the other day, and what a lovely little name.
Yeah, that's right. So often we find these handles here in varying shapes and sizes, and they are sometimes called by the mudlarks that find them Thames todgers.
They do have a bit of a todger look about them, I have to say.
Yeah, I know. And so they came from these pipkins, 16th to 18th century pipkins, which were used for cooking soups. I mean, all these pottery were very functional.
Yeah. I mean, we often find pot legs, metallic ones, bronze ones, but no, I haven't found anything from a pipkin before. So that's definitely on my wish list for if I was going to wish for something ceramic.
And there's this kind of pottery, you know, with
Oh,
the
yes.
designs on that often came from nice big baking dishes and
Real rustic stuff. That I'm quite familiar with because my dad's an antique dealer and he has quite a lot of those in their entirety And they're very textural, aren't they? You can actually
They
feel the
are.
slit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. And then,
beautiful.
of course, there is the older sort of medieval, the greenware as well. I'm
Greenware.
not going to pretend to be an expert on pottery because I'm absolutely not. That's why, I would send you to Richard Hemery.
Richard Hemery is a great place to point us to. But I think, I think what we're learning from what you're telling us is that everyone starts not an expert in everything. We all start with zero knowledge, don't we? And once you start, I never knew what a piece of Roman pottery was like. It's only now I've found it and handled it, I could spot it a mile off. I
Yeah.
think you become an expert in the narrow field of what you find. So I think, it's been amazing to see a few different eras in your pottery collection, because I think that will give people a little bit more confidence that what they're holding is in fact Roman or medieval.
It's a real connection to the everyday person, I think, just to think that somebody used it to cook a stew, years and years ago.
Yeah.
And also, that you may have seen a picture. Where's it gone? It's quite special. Sometimes you might find a piece of pottery with, the thumbed.
That's amazing. So somebody's made a pattern using their thumb. I mean, that piece I just showed you here, this piece, which is very nothing special. It's a piece of very, very crudely made, well, I don't know what it was, very thick and biscuity. But I can feel, if I put my thumb in there, I can feel a thumbprint. And I
Oh,
really,
right. That's
really like that. It's like, it feels, as you say, it's an everyday object, something that normal people like us doing their daily lives would have used and touched. It's just, isn't that amazing? Those thumbprints. That's
yeah,
quite
it really is.
a
Yeah.
big thumbprint, that, isn't it? And that's a big old, big,
Yes, and you
big
put your
man.
finger on it and you think, it's a real connection to the past. And actually, I've got a couple of other bits up here which are from old pots. These can date back to about the 14th, 15th century, I think. And again at the bottom, they've been pinched around the edge.
Yes. And even those marks on the side is someone's fingers on the wheel.
Same here as well. They've been sort of pinched, and it's all, there's so many
Wow,
signs of how they've been made by the potter all those
that's
years.
incredible. So those are sort of 13th, 14th
Yeah,
century.
that's right. Yes, and they were used for drinking ale from, I think.
Oh, very nice. I like those very much.
The more modern pottery as
Oh, yeah.
well, you're going to find, which are the pieces of Victorian transferware. Often you find like the willow plate and patterns and various different pieces, that might have a design on them, and quite often you get part of the design. And if you ever want to try and track down the whole design, there's also a very good book here which was sent to me, which was by a man called Richard Halliday, and he's got so much information here basically about Victorian transferware. So it's a book that's worth
Okay.
looking at. But also
Okay.
he's on Instagram, Richard Halliday. I'll have to send you the
I
details.
love those pieces. They're not as old, but they sometimes have really interesting imagery on, don't they? That tell us more about life or more about what people aspired to in life. Often, the kind of countryside living,
Yeah,
fishermen, and it's quite interesting to see what the fashionable design of the day was when you find those little sherds. Awesome. Okay, so ceramic done. Let's think about glass then. Glass is tricky because it gets smashed, doesn't it? And we just find horrible sharp pieces. I mean, I found something the other day. You're going to laugh how tiny this is and how insignificant compared to your lovely find. So I found a piece of glass. To me, it's on a Roman field and it's got bubbles in it, which must mean it's been hand blown. And it's as Roman coloured as I can.
it's beautiful, isn't it? That aquamarine.
Yeah, I think it's from a Roman bottle. You showed one in your presentation. I think that's what. Ah, hello. Roman bottle, meet
It
your
looks
little
extremely
friend.
similar in terms of colour, doesn't it?
Yes, I do think, and it's got a kind of opaqueness to it, hasn't it? It's not totally clear, and there are tiny bubbles inside because it was hand blown. It was not made like modern glass molded. It's made with someone's mouth blowing into molten glass. So it's that I think that's what I've got. I do believe I have found finally my first piece of Roman glass. I'm really thrilled with it. I know it's very, very small, but that's a lovely object, that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's really beautiful. I just love the wonkiness of
The
it.
wonkiness, yeah, that's it. And when you hold it up flat, you can see that it's sort of, would it have had a stopper in it, do you think, a cork?
Yeah, I think it would have had some kind of stopper, and also there would have been like a handle, which is
Ah, yes. Okay, so it's missing a piece. And
yeah.
I wonder what it would have been like, a kind of demijohn shape with it,
So
maybe.
so yeah, I'm not absolutely certain, but I think so.
No.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
yes,
just
I love it. I mean, just the idea that that's Roman,
I
it's
know
always so mind blowing just to hold a piece of Roman
it
anything. And
blows my mind finding anything Roman, and as you say, it's that connection, and a very personal one, really, isn't it? An object that's been discarded or dropped, whether it's metal detecting find or field find, to be that first person to then touch that thing again. I mean, I wonder what our Roman ancestors would think of this, because they'd probably go, "What are you? This is that's just an old bottle that we threw threw on the
that's
dump."
the thing. I've
But
always thought that people would be so surprised at how excited we get when we find something that they probably just threw away.
yeah, I think so too. I think they'd go, you've missed, walk another 50 paces that way, you've missed a massive hoard of gold coins. You're focusing on a bit of ceramic or a piece of broken glass. But I do think it is lovely to see something like that come out of the ground. I was very excited to find it. So okay, so Roman glass has quite a distinctive look, because is it often that aqua colour?
I think it often is, yeah. From what I know,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
I
I'm not.
think I haven't seen anything in, I'm not sure I've seen any Roman glass that's different colour to that.
No.
Um,
So yeah, you are looking for that. That's a certainly a good indication that
Good
it's.
indicator, yeah. Okay, and the thick wonkiness of it and the opaqueness of it as well. So okay, so moving on in time from Roman, what would you expect to see from a piece of medieval glass?
Um. Well, medieval glass. I think I'm going to have to move straight onto onion bottles,
Okay. Oh, I'm looking forward to the onion bottles.
which are post. What they're post medieval,
They're
aren't they?
post-medieval, but only just, I think.
Yeah. So
Why
I've got. Let me just jump up a minute and find
Okay.
my first prized find an onion bottle, which I actually stuck together. It was in pieces. One second. Um, and
Oh, goodness me. Look
yes.
at that.
So you're
Oh,
always going to get
wow.
these very big, well, they call them punts, like this kick up bit here. You often find the bases of these as well, and they're very sort of wide and
I did not know that that was a thing in, thank you for showing that, because I often find things like that on Silly, and I'm never sure whether they're glass from a shipwreck, and I think now I know they are, and I should have blooming well picked them up. You do find those with that very deep indentation, and I
yeah.
often think that's strange, doesn't look like a modern bottle. Okay, this is very helpful to see. What's the iridescence on the edge of that from?
Well, I think it's the something in the glass that comes to the surface, and then can just flake off. But I actually sprayed this to keep
Maybe to
that
keep it.
iridescence.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? It looks like an oil slick
Chemical
almost.
reaction, but I'm not absolutely certain what exactly causes it. I don't know if you want to, just for fun, see when I found this.
Yes, please.
This
Absolutely.
Let me just find the actual place. Go through all of this. 1 minute. Yeah. So here we are. This is when I found it.
Oh, I bet you didn't want to use that trowel too much.
It's
Wow.
very fortunate. I think that, another tide it would have washed away.
Being covered up, and yeah, and then particularly as it's in pieces, you might have found that it got separated and you'd never been able to put that thing back together. So you found the whole thing, but in bits. Oh wow.
But then I stuck it together and
Wow. That's beautiful, Nicola. Well done. Good job on the sticking as well. That's not an easy job.
beauty. Yeah, so now I've been fortunate enough to find a few. I've got a larger one here. Um,
I love that. Look how wonky it is. That's
I know it's
awesome.
so wonky, and this one got a bit missing, but you can see there. It's like having the nice section there. You can see how.
It's actually, I mean, it's a bit of a swizz, isn't it? You go to buy your whatever, and you're buying half of its air from that bit in the base. It's not really going to store that much, is it?
No, I know, and considering it's so well made, and often you find as well just the necks of these bottles, and again there are charts, a bit like pipe charts, that you can look at the shapes of the necks and the shapes of the bottles and date them pretty precisely. A very
Wow.
good resource actually is are the books by Ivor Noel Hume. He wrote All the Best Rubbish and Treasure in the Thames, and they are
Okay.
excellent for identifying bits of bottle
It's
and
a bottle. Okay, brilliant. That's a really good idea. So, and are those bottles that would have been used for wine, or what would have been stored in there?
brandy and mostly wine and brandy. The small one, the first one I found, it could also have had some kind of medicine in it because it's very small, but generally be wine and brandy. And this is a slightly later one. This is a mallet.
Mallet, yes. Okay, so that's got a different shape.
Very, yeah, very, very deep punch there.
Amazing, isn't it? So I wonder how, so it was be hand blown, and then I guess they put something up on the to push that bit inside it so that it could stand up. I guess that's what that's for, that bit at the bottom.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
When you blow the glass, it blows up like a balloon. And then you've got to put something in the end of it to push that glass back inside itself so that the bottle can stand up.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, talking of bottles standing up, that those onion bottles there, they've got such a wide base, and they were often, because then it's easier for them to sit on the shelves in ships and things when they're.
Ah, yeah, rolling back. Do you think these bottles were made in Britain or were they brought from other places?
Oh, some of them probably France, I
Yeah,
expect.
I bet they came in on the ships from
A lot
somewhere
of them
far away.
probably did, but onion bottles, you can often find shards in fields, and that it's usually quite dark glass, and it might also have some iridescence on it as well.
Okay, so that's the clue, isn't it? It's looking for that kind of oil slicky surface, quite thick and dark glass that could potentially indicate medieval activity on your permission.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, amazing. God, I feel like I've learned so much already from today. Thank you so, so much. I did want to ask you one other question, and that is about display, because everyone's got their own way of doing it. Some people display things by type. So here are all my hammered coins. Here are all my buckles. And other people prefer to display things by era. So here are all my medieval things together, buckles and coins and everything else. And then here are all my Roman things. I just wondered if you have any tips about display, and and also what kind of backdrop you use to display objects. Do you use old printers trays or any other top tips for display?
Well, I do a variety of things because I quite like a bit of chaotic jumble of all these different eras, all jostling for attention together, like the table behind me. There's clay pipes, there's more modern ceramics, transferware, there's the very old bottles. I quite like it. Just
Yeah, I mean, in some ways that sort of mirrors the way you find objects on the Thames, that it is this kind of big jumble sale of things. You just don't know what era you're going to find. It could be anything, couldn't it? Right back.
Yeah, it's just it just feels. You look at it, and there's just so much to look at, and it just fills me with joy just looking
Yeah.
at all this jumble of objects from different times of in history. But in my hallway, I do have a couple of display cases, which I can send you some photos, which I got from IKEA years ago, and they are a lot more organised. And I do have on there sort of a little shelf with some Samian on it, and I've got a shelf with some pottery that's mess plates from ships, and so there's a little bit more order in those.
And also sometimes I suppose it's that sort of juxtaposition of one thing next to another. I think that's why I like to collect glass and ceramic with my coins and put them together, because I think they tell more of a whole story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
About
I had a little section with my Roman coins and my a couple of Roman pots and a little Roman hairpin, so they're all together.
yeah, that's nice.
But I do use printers trays quite a lot as well. I quite enjoy those because you can just put little things.
Yeah, I like that as well, like organizing things in a little patchwork, and of course your art that you make from your finds as well, to just sort of enjoy putting things next to each other and arranging them in a kind of little tableau. That's a lovely way to do it as well. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so very, very much for being so willing to help us all. I know that a lot of people are going to found this very, very helpful, and it's been fascinating. Thank you, Nicola. So people can find you, of course, if they're not already subscribed.
Yeah, they can find me on YouTube on Nicola White Mudlark or on Instagram at Tideline Art. And yes, and all these different, I'm sure as the same as you, all the social media platforms, they all lead back into one
Yeah,
another.
you all end up back in the same place eventually. Well, I think it's been so great. I've learned so much. I'm sure everyone else will agree. This has been really, really fun. And I can't wait till our adventures next week. So let's get packing, Nicola White.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I really am. Yes,
I'm so excited as well. So we're going on our island adventure to the Isles of Scilly, and we're going to be doing some searching and telling stories and finding out all about the history of the place. So watch this space, everyone. Some exciting videos to come from both of us, hopefully.
definitely.
Okay, Nicola, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for today, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, see you very soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for being here. Take care. Bye.